So great. Back to school, man. It's a big day. I'm so excited. Some of you already started, but this is exciting. As Lisa and I don't have this anymore. We're empty nesters as well. And as you guys are stressed out, excited about your kids going back to school, we're just kicked back having a good time. So anyway. Hey, I want to welcome all those watching at our West End campus, and I know they had a kindergarten recognition today. That's such a cool campus. I think we have a photo of it somewhere, and there it is. Look at this. So great, so amazing. And I show you that because my grandson's in the middle of that. I think there he is, Bo. There you go. And I couldn't be there today, but I know Lisa's down there, Sugar's down there, and all of his other family. And so we're just so glad that West End's recognizing this big transition into school. It's going to be so great. And then I want to say hi to everybody on our Missouri City campus. I know you're down there. Liz is there today, the choir. I hope you had a great time. We rocked it out here in Richmond today, did we not? Wow. Man, we did so much the Episcopalians don't know what to do. It's like it's that amazing. It was great. And I know many people are watching online. I always say hi to my mom and people in Washington and Arkansas that are watching. And I want to say hi to all those folks at the Ramsey unit. We just started a campus at the Ramsey unit in Rocheron. And men, I just want to say to you, thank you for trusting us enough to come to church and to experience this. And we hope it really encourages you. So listen, hey, we are in the Book of Ruth. And we're very excited about what's going on because in this story, you're going to find your story. This is the story of God's redemptive love, and it's the story of grace and mercy. And here's the thing. I've been off for a little while, so let me just tell you kind of what's going on with me. I just feel like I went to Grapevine High School right here, and I graduated 40 years ago this summer. And I heard somebody go, God. So old. Anybody else went to Grapevine High? Yeah. Yeah. So, here's the deal. From somewhere in high school, somebody starts asking you this question, what you gonna do? 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 And we're supposed to somehow figure this out. This is just me ranting. It's not the Bible yet, so hang on. We're supposed to figure out what it is that we're supposed to be doing. What are we supposed to be doing? And we just making stuff up. That's what we're doing. Let me tell you how I got to college. I got to college, somebody said to me in my second semester of high school, somebody said to me, what are you going to do after graduation? I said, I don't know, which is not the right answer, right? I don't know. I said, what are y'all doing? So Barry's standing there, and Barry said, well, I'm going to North Texas State University. You ought to come. And I thought, okay. And so that was back when you could take the SAT, not do good on the SAT, and still get in school. And so I took the SAT. I go, what do I got to do to get in? He goes, we got to fill out the application. You got to take the SAT. So I took the SAT, didn't do very well, and got into school. And it was a long time ago. And so that's kind of how this sort of began to evolve. And what I want to say, because I know somebody's going to email me angry today, I just want to say, your plan is great. It's a great plan, super plan, good plan, way to go, way to plan it out. But you're probably not going to, your life's probably not going to follow that plan. I mean, I studied business, I ended up a pastor. I mean, really, we don't really know how this ends up. And what I want to do for you today out of the Book of Ruth is take the pressure off that you have to be able to tell the future. I want to take the pressure off that feeling you have deep down inside that you feel like you're behind. I just want you to know today, you're not behind. You're not behind. And you're right on time. And I want to tell you, if you've screwed it up, and you have, God can put it together. I'm telling you, there's this idea, and we're going to see all that in the story of Ruth. Let me give you a recap. This is the boring part of the sermon. Check out if you need to. Here we go. Ruth was a daughter-in-law of Naomi who was married to Elimelech. That will be on your test. So be paying attention on that. Elimelech was a Jewish man living in Bethlehem, and they experienced a famine. So Elimelech and Naomi moved with their two sons to Moab, a foreign country. They should not have done that. That was a mistake. You never leave God's promised land for something else. But they did. We would have done the same thing, so we can't throw rocks at that. Then their two boys married Moabite women, a girl named Orpah and a girl named Ruth. They're not supposed to do that, but they did that. And so they're all living happily ever. So Elimelech had this plan, and the plan was, well, we're not going to starve here in Bethlehem. We're going to go over here to Moab, and we're going to eat. So they get over there, and guess what happens? Elimelech dies. Good plan. How's that plan working? Then his 2 sons die. And so these 3 women are left destitute 3,000 years ago in a very difficult place in a foreign land. For Naomi, it was a foreign land. And so Naomi tells Orpah and Ruth, are y'all still listening? Okay, Orpah and Ruth, that you should stay here in Moab, but I'm going back to God's promised land because that's where my people are. But you should stay. Well, Orpah decided to stay because that was natural, but Ruth decided to go with her mother-in-law. An amazing thing. And she gave this incredible speech. Maybe you remember it. She says, hey, where you go, I'll go. Your people will be my people. And then she said this amazing thing. She said, and your God will be my God. Now, she converted to following Yahweh, this Jewish God, the God we believe in today, because something happened in her relationship with her mother-in-law and her Jewish family that allowed her to believe this is the way, this is truth. And it was able to allow her to unlock her from her identity. Her identity as a Moabitess, her identity as a worshiper of a god named Chemosh, her worshiper, she left her mother, her father, her people, her language, and she was able to follow God to Bethlehem. Then, I'm going to get to a point, hang on. Then, they end up in Bethlehem and they're hungry. And so Ruth goes out and begins to get a grain ad in this field. And then we ran into this phrase, as it turns out. Remember that? As it turns out, the field that she went to was the field of Boaz. Have y'all been using that word Boaz this week? Huh? Get your Boaz out of here? Have y'all been doing that? Well, that's totally inappropriate. My grandson had a fish. He got a fish this week. And I said, what are you going to name it? He goes, well, I don't know. And he said, Pappy, I don't know. And I said, well, you ought to name that fish Boaz. He said, well, that's a dumb name. And I said... Well, the fish died, and 2 days later, have you ever had a funeral service around a toilet? It's so great. Anyway, so Ruth ends up in the field of Boaz. As it turns out, it's like God was doing something that nobody could see and ordered her step. She did not have a plan. They just said, we got to get out of Moab because it's dangerous for us as widowed women in this place. We got to get back to Bethlehem. That's all their plan was. And they got there and they got hungry. And so Ruth ends up going out there. And then Boaz recognizes there's something special about this lady, right? And he makes this comment. Look at what he says in chapter 2. We haven't got to chapter 3 yet. Chapter 2. Boaz said, I've been told all about what you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother, and how you've left your homeland, and you've come to live with the people you did not know before. Man, this is an amazing thing 3,000 years later. Think about it in that day, right? He goes on to say, may the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, this is the phrase you got to kind of keep, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Well, what if the idea of a faith in God was more about taking refuge in the right place versus having a good plan that works out? What if this idea, put it back up there, please, the thing, this idea of whose wings, there it is, whose wings you have come under to take refuge is a picture of a mother hen who spreads out her wings during the rainstorm and all the chicks get up under the protection. That's the picture that's going on. And you're going to see that just a little bit. That was important. Who's covering or who's protecting or whose refuge do you take it? Now listen, I've had so much coffee today. So anyway, listen to me. Listen to me. This pressure you're feeling from social media to have it all figure out is going to wreck your mental health. I'm telling you, it's going to wreck you. You're going to go, well, everybody else is ahead. Especially when you start hitting big numbers like 20, 30, 40, 50. I'm looking straight at 60. And it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have it all figured out by now. And it's like, no, you're not. This is the idea that all of a sudden God's going to have a plan and it's going to unfold, right? So here is what happens in chapter 3. We finally got to the sermon. All that was introduction, guys. We're going to be here a while. Listen, So one day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for." Now Boaz, with whose women you have been working, is a relative of ours, and tonight he will be at the winnowing barley in the threshing floor. Wash and put on perfume and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you're there until he has finished eating and drinking. And when he lays down, note the place where he's lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lay down. And then he'll tell you what to do next. Now, this sounds like a hookup, doesn't it? I mean, really, that's what this sounds like. It's like you read this and go, mother-in-law ain't done. It's like, go out there, put on, watch it, shave those legs. Let's get going here. I don't know if Jewish women shave their legs. I don't know. So anyway, get out there, clean up, put on perfume. But that's not what's really happening here. I know it seems like that, but you got to understand the Jewish system that this foreigner found herself in. In the system that God put together, there was a system, because men died a lot, that women were left in a very vulnerable place in the culture. And so a relative of the deceased husband could be a kinsman redeemer, right? Kinsman redeemer, it's all kind of out in the book of Leviticus, and marry and bring in under the covering of that kinsman redeemer the protection, maintain the line of the name, and provide security. So it wasn't just that Naomi was saying, go find, go lure this man. What she was saying is, even though you're a foreigner, Ruth, you've accepted Yahweh as your God, and you're entitled to this system. So go and see. It's totally optional for the redeemer to either redeem or not to redeem. And so go ask Boaz if he's interested in this. And so this is what happens. She goes down, and there it is. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking, and he was in good spirits, he went over to lay down at the far end of the grain pile. And Ruth approached quietly. Look at the insecurity in her. Approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. And in the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. He got spooked, right? Midnight, right? Then he says this, "Who are you?" And I love this response from Ruth. This is our response to God. "I am your servant Ruth." That's who I am. I'm your servant Ruth, she said. "Now spread the corner of this garment over me, protect me, since you are a guardian redeemer, a kinsman redeemer for our family." Now, this had a lot of insecurity for Ruth because she was a foreigner. And she may not have been entitled to all that, at least in other people's opinions. And yet she approached with great humility Boaz, and here's what's basically happening. She's asking Boaz to marry her. Can you imagine the insecurity of that? I mean, what I want you to see here is this idea that Boaz represents in the story God, and you and I can relate to Ruth. And the approach that God is modeling for us here is one of humility, one of being a servant, one of putting ourselves at the care of the Redeemer and believing that his character will take care of us, that we place ourselves under his covering and his protection and his refuge. And we live in a culture that says you're supposed to have it all together and know what you're doing. You're supposed to be strong enough and smart enough, and you're supposed to get it together. God's going, "No, come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." And so it takes the pressure off me that I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to be doing in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. That we have this plan, this great plan. What we see in Ruth is this God's plan was beginning to take shape. Ruth had faith in God first, then she had faith in Boaz. And Boaz noticed this humility, and he became part of God's plan. That's why one of my favorite passages, it should be one of yours, Proverbs 3, it says this, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." Now, before you email me, let me tell you, is this supposed to be, I'm not supposed to think about tomorrow? No, listen, I'm a future tripper. I'm worried about tomorrow. I'm worried about next week. I'm wondering what's going on 5 years from now. I'm planning for retirement, all that stuff. Is this supposed to, I'm not supposed to have ambition or dreams? No, you're supposed to. You should. My dream is to be in the NBA and dunk. I want to do it. I really do. But you know white men can't jump. Anyway, so it's quoting a movie. Okay, anyway. So it's that idea where it's like, okay, but here's the truth. You got to listen to me. I know you like your plan. You came up with it. Congratulations. And you think your plan, when you achieve it, is going to make you happy. And I'm just here to tell you, it might not. And you spend all this time and all this energy, get to where you need, and it's usually about achievement and usually about wealth. And I'm just saying, God made us for purpose. And achievement and wealth are byproducts. They're not goals. And all of a sudden, what we see in the story of Ruth is this idea that God put together this amazing plan. Remember, they were destitute. Listen, I just want you to know this. The times that you are the most teachable are the times when you're the most desperate. When you've lost something, when you don't know what to do, when you wake up in the morning and you say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what we're going to do. Like, what are we going to do now? Like, given this, what are we going to do? And you don't see a way out. This is a great place for you. It's not an easy place, but it's a place where you can surrender all to God because you ain't got no more answers. And you go, oh, God, help me. You know Ruth and Naomi did that. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going back to Bethlehem. And I don't know what we're supposed to do, but we got to eat, so let's go get some grain. And as it turns out, God put them in the right place at the right time, with the right man, and all of a sudden God begins to redeem. Were they supposed to leave Bethlehem in the first place? No. Were they supposed to marry Moabite women? No. And yet God's grace is sufficient, and God moved, and God changed, and God provided. Listen, you can't screw up God's plan. You can't make enough mistakes to get out of his redemptive care. And all of a sudden, all of us, we have this bad self-esteem that says, oh man, it's too late for me. It ain't too late for you. You don't know how old I am. I know how old I am. From wherever you are, God can knit together a meaningful, purposeful, joyful life from wherever you are. From wherever you're starting. From whatever you're doing. He doesn't say, like you've heard from your parents or heard from other people, well, maybe you should have thought about that before you did it, huh? Don't you love that guy? Maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe you ought to lie in the bed you made. You know. Don't you just love those people? The problem is, I've been that person. Well, he's getting what he deserves. Listen, let me tell you, you don't want what you deserve. You want God's grace. You want mercy. You want forgiveness. So when she appeals to Boaz, says, will you marry me? Will you redeem me? Will you help me? Here's what Boaz says. He says, and now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I'm going to do all that you've asked. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of, say it together, everybody, noble character. So there's been a consistency with Ruth that all the people knew that she was a person of great character, noble character. And although it's true that I am the guardian or the kinsman redeemer of your family, there is another. There's a twist in the story. So God starts unfolding this plan, but there's a kink in the plan, right? And the kink is there's another person more closely related to Ruth that has the first right of refusal on being this kinsman redeemer. So even though God begins to take a plan, puts the plan together, and you begin to see light at the end of the tunnel, you're going to need faith for every step because all of a sudden this ain't resolved yet. And that's the hardest place for us to trust God. It's in the unresolved. We give thanks and glory and shout hallelujah when things are over. But it's in the journey where our faith grows. It's God's plans requires faith every step of the way. And the story of redemption that we're reading here is the story of our lives, right? And so he gives her a gift, and she heads home, hoping that Boaz can resolve this issue, right? And so she gets home, and he also said to her, bring me your shawl you're wearing, and hold, here's the gift. And she did so, and he poured into it 6 measures of barley, more food, more provision, and placed a bundle on her. Then he went back to town. And then, let's go. So he goes back to town. So Ruth takes this gift, and when Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, did you get him? No, she didn't. She said, hey, how did it go? I mean, what's our future? Now remember, Naomi in chapter 1 was a woman that was very bitter and hopeless. And now you see this glimmer of hope because of what God's doing. She told her everything that Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. This is the character and the nature of a redeemer he provides. And when Ruth came to her, then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for this man will not rest until the matter is settled today. So Boaz provides Naomi and Ruth, and then he pursues us. And this tells us something about God and you. Listen, let me tell you something. There are things that are in the way, usually obstacles that we put in there between you and your Creator. And even though God sent his only begotten Son, Jesus, so that you and I could have grace and forgiveness because Christ paid the price for your transgressions, oftentimes we get busy or feel like we can do it without God. And I want you to see in Boaz's character here that he pursued redemption. He pursued reconciliation. We'll see it next week clearly. And that's what God's doing with you today. He's pursuing you. He wants a relationship with you. He wants to be your anchor of hope. He wants to be the one that you place yourself under his care. He wants to be the one that you plan on surrendering to. He wants you to approach him and say, I am your servant Patrick, or I'm your servant Ruth, or I'm your servant, insert your name. This is it. This takes the pressure off all of us trying to figure out what we're supposed to be in life and allows God in a surrendered, humble state, this is the hard part, to trust him that he knows what's best for my life. Listen, if you were to told me 40 years ago that I was going to end up being a pastor, my classmates would laugh at you, right? My classmates wouldn't, like, what? I would even go to college. I'm telling you, I could have not knit together the life that God's provided for me. I don't have that kind of smarts and that kind of plan. I know you like your plan. I'm not saying abandon your plan. What I am saying is surrender your plan. God, here's what I think I'm going to be. God, I really want to be an NBA player. I really do. But what do you want? First thing he told me is not that. God told me, I've seen you play. You're terrible. And you know, a lot of our plan has to do with, this is maybe not be helpful, but a lot of the plan that we put together is really about trying to make up for some insecurity, some hurt, some loss in our life. And here, you know, I know many of you, I didn't plan on being here, but here you are. You're in Houston. Doing what you're doing. I know many of you didn't plan on getting sick, but you got sick. And I know many of you didn't plan on getting divorced, but you got divorced. And I know many of you didn't plan on losing your job, but you lost your job. And even though all that happened and you didn't plan on it, heck, you didn't even get a vote on it. God, in his redemptive love, is putting back together your future that's filled with purpose and meaning and hope. And the hope isn't in everything working out okay. The hope is in the person of Jesus Christ. The hope is in this fact that God fearfully and wonderfully made me, and he has not forgotten me. And here I am. And God, step by step by step, is going to put together a plan. And as it turns out, you're going to get to a place in your life where you're going, oh, only God could have done this. Only God could have done this. And the tension here, the tension is, I like my plan. And so something happens in our economy, in our culture, that we put together a plan and try to beg God to help us. And again, let me just say this because I'm insecure. I'm totally insecure and I'm a little overweight. So listen. I just want you to know, don't give up your dreams. I don't want you to give up your dreams. Don't give up your ambitions. You want to be a pilot? Go be a pilot. I get it. I'm just saying, along the way, keep a loose grip on that thing and surrender it to God. Because here's what I believe. He's got a better plan than you do. He didn't build you for independence. He built you for intimacy. And he wants to provide for you, if you'll let him, what you cannot provide for yourself. Now here's a passage of scripture every Christian likes to quote. This is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. We like that passage, don't we? I love that passage, actually, because I believe this. I believe God's heart is to give you a plan that's going to prosper you, it's going to not harm you, it's going to give you hope and a future. But what you have to understand, the reason this was written down, the reason this was inspired, the reason Jeremiah put it in there is because when this was written, the people were in trouble. You see, when you're in trouble, you wonder if God does have a plan for you, when we're at a loss, right? And so what happened was the Israelites at this time were taken captive from a king named Nebuchadnezzar. This will be on your test. And Nebuchadnezzar took them kingdom in a place called Babylon, and they were miserable up there. And God began to say, here's what's going to happen. And he gave them this, hey, I have a plan. Don't worry, I have a plan. And right before that passage that went away, right before that passage, he says, in 70 years, I'm going to bring you back to Israel. Now, if he said that to me, I'm going, I'll be dead in 70. I'm not going to make it. That's what he says. In 70 years, I'm bringing you back to Israel, reestablished. But I want you to know, put Jeremiah 29:11 back up here. But I want you to know, these 70 years, it's going to be hard for you to believe this. But I want you to know, in the middle of your divorce, in the middle of your child custody issue, in the middle of all the things that are going wrong, I want you to know God has a plan for you. And he declares it. And he wants you to know it. Because the plan ain't coming to fruition yet, but it's coming. It may be 70 years. You're not going to make it. And the Lord plans to provide for you. He plans. He's not going to harm you. I know you've given up on God at times. I have too, because you thought God was trying to hurt you in some way. But God's telling you, here's the truth, people. The truth is, I'm not here to harm you. I'm going to give you hope and a future. I'm going to provide all that you need. Why does he tell us that? Because in the hellhole we find ourselves in, we find it hard to believe. And he wants you to know the truth even though it doesn't feel like it's true. And I'm telling you, God has a plan. Take your plans, give them to God. See if he likes them. He might say, whoa, I never thought of that. That's great. You ought to be doing that. Way to go. Yeah, I never thought of that. You being in the circus, perfect. And but quite possibly he'll redirect you. You see, here's what I believe. I got to finish because I'm starving, actually. Here's what I believe. Those interruptions in your plan that's caused you so much distress and depression because things aren't working out the way you planned, those are possibly, I don't know what's going on for you, but possibly those are God redirecting you to a better thing. Possibly, I know God's plan wasn't for you to get a divorce. I get it. But here you find yourself. And God's plan, regardless of where you are, is to piece back together wholeness and happiness and joy. And here's a word, contentment. So you're not always longing for catching up with your peers or feeling like you're behind or not making up, or by the age of 40, I should be doing this, or by the age of 50, I should have had this, or wherever you are, friend, God can take it from there and make something beautiful out of it. But you have to surrender it. Aren't you glad for that? Boy, I am. God has taken a mess of my life and made something amazing out of it. It's great. I started dating my wife in high school. And I look at her from time to time, and I say, I just can't believe you married me. I mean, we've been married 34 years. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And she says, yeah, I can't believe that either. So anyway, it's been amazing. I have 4 kids and 2 grandkids, and so amazing. God. He said, I just couldn't have done it. I just couldn't have put this together. Thank God he cares about me and gets over my arrogance so that he can move in my life. So I hope that's what you'll do today. I hope you'll surrender. I hope you'll say, God, will you just pull your cover over me, protect me and help me, and provide for me? That's what we all need. Let me pray. We'll go eat. Father, thank you so much for loving us through our bad choices. And thank you so much for providing direction and guidance, that you care more about our future than even we do. And we just confess we have all these wild ideas about what makes life work, only to be reminded from time to time our plans are insufficient. But your plans are complete and they're redemptive and they're whole. So may we put aside all this social media nonsense that tells us we're behind and that we're losing, when with you we know we're going to win. With you we know that we are more than conquerors. With you we know we're going to overcome. And may we not give up the idea that we have ambitions and goals and talents and gifts that you've given us, but you're supposed to be the Lord of our life. And if you're here and you've never given your life to Christ, boy, whether you're in Missouri City, West End, or there at the Ramsey unit, you should give your life to Christ. He knows best. You just say, God, I'm asking you for forgiveness. I've been living life on my own, and I want to follow you. I want to give my life to you, believing Jesus died on the cross for me and rose from the dead and is alive and cares. So I know I can't be good enough to make up for my bad, so I just surrender to you and pray you would cover me up with your grace, with your mercy. And I pray, oh God, that you would direct my steps and lead me to a place of purpose and significance in this life. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.